It's nice to actually get some news about this game that isn't about Shadow. Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Today we're going to be talking about the rumor that was going around recently that Sonic Generations was going to get rewritten. Now, this rumor was going around and I was like, okay, well, let's see. The person who started this rumor had said that this had come from Ian Flynn from a recorded Bumblecast that had not aired. And people are like, well, how do you know this? Well, they do record the Bumblecast in front of people. The Bumblecast is, of course, Ian Flynn's podcast. And they do record in front of people. I believe it's mainly in front of like Discord mods and stuff like that who usually fact check them and all that type of stuff while they record. And this guy was claiming that Ian Flynn had kind of confirmed that he was rewriting parts of Sonic Generations for the remaster. And he had said it in the podcast. And that's a bit of an iffy source, and then he has no actual info, like he doesn't have audio of it or anything. It's more like, my source said it. Okay, who's your source? Just trust me, bro. Oh, okay. Yeah, so I was gonna make a video about it, and I was like, there's not real concrete proof to this rumor. Well, it is a rumor no longer. People have gotten their hands on some ROMs of Sonic X Shadow Generations, and while nothing with Shadow's portion has really been revealed, thankfully, we do have some stuff for Sonic's. And his is actual cutscenes. Now, you can find these cutscenes on Twitter, and they are showcasing the rewritten lines. And they do prove that a lot of the stuff that the original rumor said was true, which was that they have redubbed the game with the current voice cast. You can definitely hear it in the Knuckles cutscene, where it is no longer Travis Williamson doing the doing the voice of Knuckles. It is now Dave B. Mitchell who does Knuckles now. He is now doing the voice, so they've redubbed that. And the bigger thing is what they are saying during these cutscenes. So there's a comparison to it, which is how in Chemical Plant, for example, in the OG generations, Sonic and Tails don't know what Chemical Plant is. They're like, this place looks familiar. And Tails is like, oh, well, I definitely remember the smell of this place, all that type of stuff. In this one, Tails just up says, hey, this is the Chemical Plant. So there is stuff like that in there, which being rewritten, I'm actually quite fine with that. I think that those are changes that we as fans like, which is like, for some reason, they just don't know what Green Hill Zone is. They don't know what Chemical Plant is. They don't know all these places. Now, you could chalk that up to the Time Eater messing with time, and it's maybe, screwing around with their memories and all that. But I do think that is a welcome change. Them being like, oh, it's this place that I know. Yeah, well, look at that. We're here now. Another thing that is shown is how when Sonic saves one of his friends, and they come back, in the OG gens, Sonic doesn't say anything. He just shows like a reaction where he'll he'll put a thumbs up, or he'll smile, or give a nod, In this one, he actually talks to them. And again, that's shown in the Knuckles one, where Knuckles is like, thanks for saving me. Let's, bash Eggman's skull or whatever, right? And Sonic's like, hey, get in line, knucklehead. Like that type of stuff. That's a fix. I think that's a welcome change, right? He's not just awkwardly standing there. He actually communicates with his friends. Now, the big change that I was afraid of when I initially heard this rumor was, as soon as they said Sonic Generations is getting parts rewritten, my mind immediately went to Amy Rose. They're gonna change Amy Rose and all her scenes, because Sonic Gens came out back when Amy was still just the Sonic fangirl. And once I heard it's getting rewritten by Ian Flynn, of all people, I knew, her parts are gonna get cut. They're gonna cut the fangirl Amy parts so much. Ian Flynn, you've seen how he writes Amy in Frontiers? That's how he feels about Amy Rose and how she should be, right? He even does not really like the whole Amy being a fangirl thing. And some people nowadays especially are like, oh, it's so problematic. It's so toxic. Why is Amy fawning over Sonic? Because she's a fangirl. That's kind of what fangirls of people do. They kind of obsess over them and fawn over them. Now, I like both versions of Amy Rose. I like the original where she's a fangirl. She has like, the heart in her eyes when she sees Sonic. I like that Amy Rose, but I also like the current version of Amy Rose and where we're going with that. So I like both versions of Amy. You can like both. You don't have to pick a side. You can like both versions. But if I'm gonna like both versions, then I don't want you to change how Amy was originally, because then her character progression, which we're on the path towards, right, which Frontiers has been setting up, and has been shown in the IDW comics of Amy, she's progressing more and more into not just being the Sonic fangirl. She is now coming into her own, right? She's becoming more her own person. That progression and that character development is lessened if you're changing how she was in the past. Because then it's like, oh no, she was always this way. Well, then that means that it's nothing special when she gets this new character development. It lessens it. It lessens her change, right? I think a big example of this is something like in the Avatar: The Last Airbender. One of the characters, who I believe is pronounced Sokka is his name. I'm not an Avatar: The Last Airbender fan, but I remember hearing about this, where he has like a little mini arc in the animated show where he kind of is a bit sexist, like, oh, girls can't do anything, girls can't fight, they can't do this and that and the other. And then obviously he gets shown up that, like, no, that's not true, that's a stupid notion, of course girls can fight, of course girls can be warriors, all that type of stuff. And then he learns about that, and that thought is kicked out of his head, and it changes how he thinks. It changes him as a character, it changes him as a person, and now he thinks differently and knows he was wrong, and it is character development for him. But in the Avatar: The Last Bender live action, they immediately change that, and it's like, well, then him coming to the realization that he was wrong doesn't happen, and so he doesn't get that character development that, people liked to see. We like to see our characters, especially when it's an overarching narrative, not something that's like, always contained in a bubble, type of thing. It's a show that has a narrative that is moving forward. We like our characters to change with the narrative as we move along, and if you just change their flaws initially, then when they outgrow those flaws or change and develop into bigger and better versions of themselves, then it's just like, so they were never that flawed in the first place. They were always perfect. They were always this way, and that makes the change and development mean less. So I'm a very, very, not on the side of changing Amy and how she was portrayed in Generations with the current version of Amy. Now, you can already see they did make the change, especially when Sonic saves her, because when Sonic saves her in the original, she goes, oh, you saved me, Sonic. I was afraid I was never going to be able to flirt with you again. And Sonic, does facepalm. And this one, she says, oh, thank you, Sonic. I'll be sure to return the favor. And Sonic says, not my biggest problem at the moment, Amy. I'm like, God damn it. Don't do this. Don't do this. I don't like the idea of changing Sonic and Amy's relationship how it was, which was she was the fangirl chasing him, and Sonic is kind of like, obviously when he was younger, he was a bit like, ew, icky girls, whoa. But then as they went along, it more or less changed from less like, he's like, well, icky girls, to like, Amy, it's like, it was just the thing they did, right? And then he kind of just grew and grew to be like, it's their shtick now, right? Like, you can see as they move along, Sonic kind of smiles at it more. It's just kind of like, it's me and Amy's thing, right? It became the thing, right? He's less annoyed by it and more amused, right? Changing that, I don't like, right? I don't like when you go back to the past to try and retroactively change something like that, which is why I'm not a huge fan of remakes in general. I'm more of a fan of remakes if it's like, hey, this game's really old, we're gonna bring it forward, but we're gonna keep that core part of the game that you liked. We're gonna keep it, right? We're gonna keep that, so you can truly say we have brought this game just straight up from like the 90s or whatever, for example. We're gonna bring this game straight into like the current era, but it's still that game you love, right? That's why people love the Resident Evil remakes, because it's legitimately just taking the old Resident Evil games and we're just bringing it into the modern age. We're tightening the controls, we're giving them more modern controls, but The story is pretty much the exact same, with maybe a couple tweaks here or there that usually people are like, yeah, that's something that they should have done in the original. But you know, as we see with remakes now, it's all about fixing it for that mythical modern audience that doesn't exist. Don't believe me? How those Disney Plus numbers going with your modern audience superhero shows? How's the Rings of Power doing? How did Velma do? That show's going now. It sucked. But overall, my thoughts on Sonic Generations being rewritten, there's some aspects to it that make sense, but then there's other bits of it I'm like, please don't do it. I don't like you retroactively changing the past. So I'm hoping, my big thing that will show me whether my concerns are warranted is, does Amy stay the same in the opening cutscene when she tries to hug Sonic? That is the big tell. If they change that, I might legitimately get a bit disappointed in you, Sega. I will legitimately be disappointed, because that is phenomenal. Where Amy goes to hug Sonic and he's just talking to Tails and he just, not even looking, puts his hand up to stop her because he's just so used to it. That is Sonic and Amy's relationship distilled to its purest form, and I love it. And I would genuinely be disappointed if they cut that and change it. Don't do it. Okay? Don't do it. You want to showcase the fact that Amy has changed, she has grown as a character, well then you have to show us how she was so we can see that change. Let me know what you all think about Sonic Generations being rewritten in the comments down below. Are you happy about the changes? Do you want the original to stay the same, right? Do you not want changes? Me personally, once I heard about these rumors, I've actively gone out now and got just the original Sonic Generations. I'm looking at it right now. I got the original Sonic Generations for PS3 there. So if I legitimately, when all is said and done, if I don't like the changes, I have the original, so I can still play it. Which is what I recommend you always do. Whenever there's a remake, get the original, just in case, you know? So that's going to do it for me. Let me know what you all think in the comments down below, and I'll see you all next time.